A very warm welcome to my community. I'm Sherwood McCaskey. Thanks for joining us. We continue to thank those of you who come forward weekly to share your community's history. That is what you have experienced and what you have lived. We cannot overemphasize the importance of sharing that with us in your voice and using your local expressions, as opposed to reading a sanitized version written by someone completely removed from your community or removed from the island for that matter. Your community's history, as told by you, is an important and essential component in the cultural heritage of Barbados. Now, a few weeks ago, Basil Maughan, in his presentation, mentioned Westbury. This week, with a sense of pride and duty, a gentleman who spent his formative years in the Westbury community takes us into his treasured space of wonderful memories. Take it over, Major Walcott.
And Westbury community, when you talk about it, includes all around here, and we like to see ourselves as part of the New Orleans as well. Wonderful. So that brothers and sisters who grew up in Westbury Road and New Orleans went to school at Westbury, and also the boys got changed off to Wesley Hall. So in I think this is 1958, after Hurricane Janet. All the girls remained at Westbury and all the boys went to Wesley Hall. So Wesley Hall was an all-boys school. Yes, all-boys school. Okay. And we've remained very, very close. Surprising though that even though as in later years, both Westbury Road and New Orleans had a stigma according to some people, we were always family. The thing about it is that now that I've come back to Barbados and living in St. Philip, but I come down to Westbury Road often with my brothers and sisters because some of them are still there. But in those days, Westbury people were family. So much so that if anybody in the community went to the country and got some yams and potatoes, they bring back some and share with everybody. In those days, we didn't even know we were poor, but we baked cake and pudding and those things at Christmas time and Easter. And when my great-grandmother baked her, she made sure that everybody in the community get one. People used to come and taste my cake. And I remember as a little boy, when things used to sell for half-cent, you go and buy a pound of flour and it cost 10.5 cents. You say, give me the half-cent in salt, or the half-cent in matches. We didn't have supermarkets around us. But there were two grocery stores. We didn't call them stores, they were shops. And this particular shop at the corner of Pickwick Gap had a little bar. And even though the men will go in there in the evenings and buy their drinks and all of that, you will always hear the drunken men start singing, da, do, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. They always sing gospel songs first. And when the shops get a jukebox, they will go in there and play a gospel song and then go on to whatever they want. That was the thing. The other thing about Westbury Road, especially in Pickwick Gap where we grew up, parents and children had to respect each other. Now, if your mother and the next door neighbor had a quarrel, when you come out next morning, you have to go and say good morning to the person, you know. This is about Westbury Road, but I can tell you one particular story. Mrs. Leach was living opposite, and my mother and Mrs. Leach had a quarrel one evening. I was going to high school, and I came home the evening and heard the quarreling. The next morning I went out, and I passed Miss Leach. And Miss Leach looked out through the window and called out to my mother, Yulene, this one Denzel, he's a man, you didn't even tell me good morning. My mother called me back, Denzel, come here a minute, and cut my backside, you know. And I had to go crying at high school, you know. And I go crying, good morning, Miss Leach. That never happened again. But we used to play games in the road at night, in the Pickwick Gap at night. And I don't know if people remember them though, because I must tell you another story about that. But we used to play in a fine castle. You know about that? Right. See you, and then we would play There's a Brown Girl. And at that time in the night, all the mothers and fathers outside there, you know. And we all playing together. And those same men who didn't go to work the next morning will play cricket in the gap with us. And even then, if a boy say, make a mistake and say, oh, and use an expletive, the man who is bowling will tell him, you're out. You can't use them language in cricket. And we were excited about Westbury Road. And I remember the first carnival we had by the JCs. Yeah, man. In fact, the first carnival I saw, when they were preparing for it, we all went down to Kensington Oval. It used to be at Kensington Oval. And we all went down to Kensington Oval to see these people practicing. And that was the first time we heard the Pete Jones combo. And the Pete Jones combo was made up of people like Emil Straker and that group. And they sang gospel songs too. In fact, one of their big hits in those days, My Lord, what a morning, my Lord, what a morning. And then they're going to sing, Oh, when the saints go marching in. And that excited us. So each of us had a little band. And one of the things about Westbury Road, the postman who worked in Westbury Road was a member of the Salvation Army Church. He used to play the bass drum. His name was Mr. Farrell. And his children went to the Salvation Army. But we weren't at Salvation Army then. But what I'll tell you about that as I talk about it is that we respected each other. And in those days, I never heard the word before, but we knew what it was to be ecumenical. I mean, there was a little lady called Sister Gurley Austin who was from the Salvation Army. It was Miss Leach and Miss Ford, Sylvester Ford's mother, who was living in the area. They were Church of God. Then was a lady from the Anglican Church. And then there was somebody for the Methodist Church. And they will go every Saturday morning and keep open their meetings at 5 o'clock. And so those are the things that we were excited about when they come back home, they're telling us what happened and all that. Very early in life, those of us who lived in that area, we recognized right and wrong. We recognized that you couldn't steal. When we were going to Westbury Primary School, that is during Janet, right after Janet, they made the changes. But those of us who went up to Wesley Hall, you had outstanding headmasters, head teachers, not only headmasters, because Goldburn Brathwaite was the headmaster at that time. He was a prompt, staunch Methodist. And you had Mr. Davis, who was Seventh-day Adventist. Then you had the Marvel brothers, and then another Norval who became a priest eventually. But you had to recite the 23rd Psalm after lunch. After lunch, when you go back to school, you had to learn the 46th Psalm, God is our refuge and strength. And those sort of things help us to be who we are today. Another thing about Westbury Road, not only the playing in the gap, as children we would never pass the cemetery. Because there were so many duppy stories, you know. You're afraid that the duppy will get up and run you. And there was St. Leonard's Church. After a certain time at night, you don't walk past St. Leonard's Church because you're afraid of duppy. Then one of the big things in Westbury Road, I remember in Pickwick Gap in particular, was the steel donkey. You heard about that? Let me tell you something though. There was this particular house where I wouldn't tell you the reasons why they said there was a steel donkey, because it's a little different now. But people will come from St. James, St. Peter, Christ Church to see the steel donkey. Whether it was a steel donkey or not, I don't know. But what I can tell you this, one night when the people came, all of us, we didn't have electricity, so all of us had lamps. And the road wasn't paved. In those days, the road wasn't paved. And you saw a big stone came down like if somebody put it over the lamp and the lamp went out. But people came from all about to see this phenomena. To see this phenomena. But what we do know is after a number of weeks, one night the house caught fire. I was told by some of the older people, because I was about 8 years old then, but all of us as children were excited to see this, that the fire was burning inside the house, and it only came out and catch other people's houses when somebody burst the window. If not, that house would have burnt, this is what I was told after, would have burnt to the ground and we would not have known. But my brothers and sisters still talk about it because my mother had 6 of us. And I remember her taking us out the house and putting us in at the road. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Denzel, Trevor, Roger, Pam, David, Paula. And she was conquering over. And even though we still have jokes about that. But after that, other people moved into the community. And there were, what we had too, that we remembered correctly, because I talked to some of the youngsters about it. Sylvester Ford was a part of that group. And I remember we used to have a Thursday evening Bible class. There were two bigger men, don't remember their names now, who started this Bible class. And every Thursday evening, we had this at a particular area in the house where the next door lady was a Jehovah's Witness and all her children attended. The point I'm making is that we respected each other. We were family. And you had all the denominations. There's a lady who, as a youngster, I used to admire very much. Her name is Yvonne, but she's now married to Mrs. Johnson and all that. But she was a member of the Red Cross, and there was a church lad brigades. So every boy at some time passed through that. I must be the only one, but my brothers went to the church lad brigades. Then we had a young man called Loma Allen. You ever heard about that name? An outstanding Anglican. He was part of the leadership of the CLB brigade, and he started Youth Town. Youth Town was at that building that was owned by the Methodist Church. And Youth Town produced some of the best table tennis players in Barbados. You heard about the Whartons. You heard about Ricky Cummings. You heard about Trevor Manning. All those came out of Youth Town. And Youth Town catered especially to the surroundings of Green Park Lane, Lightfoot Lane in New Orleans. And one of the things about it, it made us more proud of our own selves and of the people who came out of Barbados. I remember that they would arrange, and those of us who were part of Youth Town also attended the YMCA. And when you attend the YMCA, the people who were part of it encouraged the outstanding Barbadian cricketers and things to come. I remember on one occasion, they brought in at Youth Town Charlie Griffith, Seymour Nurse, and Conrad Hunt. They were all playing for the West Indies, and we were excited about that. In fact, so much so that whenever the West Indies toured, we didn't have radio. It was Rediffusion. And there was one Rediffusion, so you get up early on mornings before they go to school to go and hear the score. And then when Ms. Leach bought her little private radio, we would go over there and listen. But the thing about it is that we felt very proud to be Barbadians, to be from Westbury Road, because Sir Everton Weekes came from the New Orleans. And I remember as boys, when we were playing cricket in the Gap, and West Indies and England, one of the things I remember was the England tour to the West Indies. In those days, you used to have a colony match, a Colts match, and then a test match. So 3 different matches. Depending on the number of days, you will see Everton Weekes come down. And I remember this clearly. Once cricket is on, somebody will stand at the top of Pickwick Gap to see when Everton Weekes' car coming down. It was a red Chevrolet X2087. I haven't forgotten that. And this person will say, Everton Weekes is coming, Weekes is... And we will all run to the top of the road to see Everton Weekes pass in his car, and he would wave. And we were excited about that, and everybody wanted to be a test cricketer. So much so that we used to do our own commentaries. And some people move on to other things, but you will hear, you'll be batting, but you're doing the commentary as well. And the other person said that he's Wes Hall, and you are Clyde Walcott or whoever it is, and you say, in comes Wes Hall to bowl to Clyde Walcott. One of the fascinating things about that is that we were very proud that Clyde Walcott was captain of Guyana team, Everton Weekes was captain of Barbados team, and for a time Frank Worrell was captain of Jamaican team. So we were proud of that. There was a brother who had a story. He said that he went to ask a man one day about the West Indies cricket. This is one of the anecdotes that we had. The man said that he was eating cheese, so the mouse got away in his pocket. So he grabbed the mouse and he said to the mouse, if you tell me who's the greatest batsman in the world, out of the 3 W's, you save your life. And the mouse said, yes! And the man said, I thought he was going to say worry. But they will tell you all kinds of stories. And as a result of that, we will gather together at night to hear the big people telling us these stories. And it was fun. So I shall tell you that one of the prominent men in Barbados was a man called Ernest Dighton Bartley. You would know that the parish council, the local government had a parish council clinic in the parochial building down the road there. And it was arranged for poor people. And everybody from Westbury Road, the New Orleans and its surroundings went every Saturday to the clinic to get free cod liver oil. And in those days, when school holidays coming up, you go down and you get your uniforms, you get shoes, because we, again I say, we didn't know we were poor, but we went and got those things, and it was a great help to people in this area. And so as a result of that, there is no election. As a little boy, I could remember that Ernest Dighton Motley Party, didn't we? You know, and so the parish council was great to us. And when I passed for high school, in those days they were still paying. And a group of us were taken to the parish council, and they made sure that we went to high school free. All we had to pay was a games fee. We got uniforms, including shoes. And those of us who went, we got free meal. Even if the school cook, it was paid for by the parish council. So a lot of us benefited from that. It is true as we get older, some of us have forgotten, but I don't forget those things. One of the things I would like to tell you about that too is that at Wesley Hall Primary School, there were teachers who singled us out and gave us free lessons because we couldn't afford to pay for it. And every Saturday morning you had 3 teachers at the school giving free private lessons. One was Mr. Wharton, he was Seventh-day Adventist too. One was Mr. Norville Colton, he went to the States and became a priest. And I think his brother was Rodney Norville. That's another thing. And we benefited from that. We benefited from that. And a lot of us now feel obligated. In fact, it's a commitment we give back. Sometimes some of my friends see me doing things and ask me, why are you doing that? I said, somebody did it for me. And I think the more we think about it, we see what a beautiful place Barbados was. A lot of our standards have dropped, that is true. But I don't blame the young people. I blame some of those who lived after us. I give an example of that. Right outside of the New Orleans, and I think it's either the 8th or the 6th, there was a big breadfruit tree at Westbury School. And the men used to gamble on that tree. And no youngster couldn't go and stand up and watch them gambling, you know. In fact, one story I remember is that a boy, his father was a smoker, so he took up one of the father's cigarette buds and passed there with it in his mouth. And then one of the men got up from gambling, slapped him in his mouth and said, this is for big man, not for you. So we couldn't gamble. The difference today is that a lot of the big men encourage the young people in gambling, in smoking, ganja, and those sort of things. So, but children knew the places in those days, and we never used the word of model. We never used the word of there's another word you use, somebody mentor. But these men had their standards, and we could not do those things that they were doing. And nothing would stop a man from seeing you doing something wrong on the street, take off his belt and give you a good flogging and send you home to your mother. And when you get home, your mother's going to give you a second one because you want to know why he flogged you. And those things help to make us who we are. The Salvation Army used to come down to, we didn't talk about the Salvation Army today, but each church at different times had their open-air services. And the people who were there took an interest in the children. That's why we were able to have these children groups. And there were so many different denominations on Pickwick Gap alone. And they're all part of it. There's a young man. Then there were some, we used to have our own sports. In those days, it wasn't called First Avenue and Second Avenue and Third Avenue. It was called Powers Gap, Redmond Gap, pond gap. I must tell you about the pond. I must take you and show you where the pond used to be. But we had the guys, the older guys in the community would collect money from different people and buy pencils and exercise books. And during the summer, we'll have our old competition in the bicycle wheel. And you get a special thing to steer your bicycle wheel. And you'll have competition in that. We have long distance running. We had 100 yards. I don't know if you know that Patsy Callender was born out of all of that. And now I mentioned Patsy, we had some outstanding Barbadian. You remember Fred Marville, weightlifter, prominent Barbadian from Westbury Road? There was Patsy Callender who could run and jump. Patsy used to play cricket with us. Was the first woman I see, first young lady I see playing cricket, and was one of the better batsmen. You say batswoman now, but they don't say batsman any day. They say, there's another word they use now, they don't say batsman, batter. Batter, I don't know where that come from. Yeah, batsman. And just like how you call the postmaster general, if it's a woman postmaster, the same thing. Bandmaster is one man, you know. And so we had sports. And in those days too, the policemen used to stop you from doing your skates. Now they're bringing in skates from scooters from overseas. And we could not even ride a scooter on the road, say mashing up the road. We used to make it from ball bearings. Our parents couldn't afford to buy toys, but we had some of the best trucks. You get a corned beef tin and make for the front of the truck. You get 4 nugget shoe polish. We didn't have a different thing. You get the polished tin wheels and you make your wheels. And you can pull your truck all over the place. And some of the boys were good at that. In those days, we didn't pay a carpenter to make the fence, the paling there, the paling. We built it ourselves. And the boys from next door will come and help me build my mother's own. And then we go down and help the other person. Everything was a family affair. And Westbury Road has changed. But when we played cricket in the gap, if you hit the ball on the house, you're out. Those were the days. So we were very careful because as we got older, people started having glass windows and glass doors. Before that was all flaps. So as that came in, we had to make sure that we didn't break the people's windows. So once you hit the house, you're out. And a lot of our practice was in the gap. We have a little smooth part that was the batting end. And once the 6 balls finish, you go down to the other end, and that was a big thing for us. The schools, the teachers, the churches, they worked together. Because when you came home from school in the evening, whether it's my house or the next door house, which psalm you learned today, and you had to recite it. And then when we started to have the evening classes, the Bible classes, we would do all of that. And it helped us to appreciate goodness of what it is. One of the other things is that I am happy to see Kezinova what it is. But all of us grew up at Kezinova. And I remember as youngsters, the bigger boys got a chance to bowl at the Test cricketers. And we were proud of that. When I got about 11 or 12, they gave me a chance to bowl as well. But football was held at Kezinova. And right here in our area, we had they eventually made the first division teams. And the first division team, you had Rangers, you had Beverly Hills. They were both from the New Orleans. And then in the lower divisions, you had Dundee United, a group of big men from here in the Westbury New Road area. And they call it Dundee United, but some of the outstanding teams that we went to watch at Kensington Oval in football would be Everton. Everton team had captain of Reggie Haynes. You remember that name? Reggie Haynes was one of the outstanding footballers playing at centre forward. And then when New South Wales became a part, you had Gas Clark, Gas Clark. But the big teams around Westbury Road were Everton, Rangers, and Dundee United in the lower divisions. But there was a man called Sam Pola. He had a look up. His eyes was a little funny. An excellent left winger. He didn't make the Barbados team, but a lot of us used to go and watch. Carlton had a good team as well. So you had the Sorrow brothers, Peter and Jimmy Sorrow. But we went. One of the big things about cricket that I will go back to, there was a lady in our gap who used to push a box cart to cricket to sell food on the grounds. And 3 or 4 of us will go the evening before. They came to volunteer to help you push the box cart, you know. And we will push the cart down to Kensington Oval and we got in free because we're helping her. But she don't see us again till lunchtime. But she used to look forward to us helping her. Sometimes if it's a test match and the crowd is big, we will get a chance to go help her serve the drinks and all of that. And out of that now we got our lunch. Man, those were wonderful days.
Remember her name?
Pardon me? Miss Gibbs. Miss Gibbs. In fact, Miss Gibbs was so good to us that when we play cricket in the gap, although we go and help her, she had a little fencing around her house. And if the ball goes, she would keep it. And there were 1 or 2 of us who were good, who wasn't afraid. And so once the ball is there, she, don't come in my yard, you know. And I wouldn't tell you who the person is, but one boy will go and say to her, Miss Gibbs, how are you today? It's so good to see you. You come with the ball? I said, no, I don't come with the ball. I just come to see how you are. And if you're going to church on Sunday, and while I'm talking to her and we get into conversation, sorry, when that person... when we're talking to her now, one of the boys jumped the fence quick and take the ball.
Boys will be boys. Those boys evidently grew up and today they live to tell. Thank you very much, Major Walcott, and thanks to our sponsors. Mind Community continues next week at the same time. I'm Sherwood McCaskey.